Hello and welcome to this short video demonstration of the Southend Clasp. This is a component used for fixation and sometimes retention in removable orthodontic appliances, and is ordinarily made from 0.7 or 0.8 round stainless steel wire. To start the process, you may actually draw the outline of the Southend Clasp on the teeth in question. In this case we're using the centrals. And here I'm bending the first or initial bend in 0.7 stainless steel wire and making a very sharp, almost 90-degree V bend. This V bend then sits into just above the interdental papillae of the centrals. Using spring-forming 64s pliers, I then form a gentle curve away from that bend, following what would be the contour of the gingivae. The Southend Clasp shouldn't contact the gingival margins. It should be at least 1 wire's width away, or if you prefer, a millimetre away from the gingivae. It should follow and hug the contact of the profile of the tooth in question in 3 dimensions, so not only around in this form, but also along it when we look down from the occlusal surface or the incisor ledge. Once we've made some small bends and are happy that the wire fits or follows about 3/4 of the way round one tooth, we then start to form the curves of the other. So forming and simulating the shape, or replicating the shape of the gingival margin on the next tooth. You see here we haven't started the 3-dimensional bend around the arch, it's still quite flat. We're actually just looking at the shape at the moment that the gingival margins form. So put it back on the model in the same place. First, where our first bend, so locating our V, then our second part is where we made the first tooth, and here you can see that because it's flat, this contact's around here up to that point. Because it's flat, we now need to bend it so it contours around the actual arch. So holding both parts, we bend at the V or just around the V until the wire starts to form and follow the arch shape. So we're just bending this around the fleshy part of our fingers. You could use pliers to do this, but it's a very gentle bend and it's very soft wire. You should be able to do this just by using your fingers or your thumbs. So not only are we following the gingival margin contours, we're also forming the actual following the contours of the teeth. And here you can see we've got contact along the labial surfaces of the teeth. The V part of wire doesn't have to fit right into the gap. Okay, there can be a small space, that's absolutely acceptable. Once we've got 2 teeth then fitted and we're content with that, we can mark off where it comes up along the distal, where the wire would come up along the distal aspects of the tooth, and just gently, again using the curved pliers, there's no hard straight edges on this, it's all curved bends, adjust that wire, making small fine adjustments all the way up so the wire actually follows along the distal aspect of the tooth and comes up almost to the incisor ledge. The wire shouldn't come over the top of the incisor ledge, otherwise it could interfere with the occlusion and possibly any further eruption of that tooth. So bring the wire up and through so that it comes immediately between the 2 teeth in contact. In this case, the distal of the central and the mesial aspect of the lateral. So very small, gentle bends. That bend I made there was just to remove the excess wire away from the palette so it didn't hit the model. And now I'm going to start to form this over the top of the or along the incisor ledge. We don't tag it at this point, we'll leave the tagging until we finish the next part. So always reposition it back on, check with the initial bend you made and initial positioning, make sure it fits here, and then the wire should come up between the central and the lateral and just fit nice and snugly between those teeth, not going over the incisor ledges and not being higher than the incisor edge height. We then move on to the other tooth and repeat the process. We mark off here where the appliance where the wire fits, and then we adjust accordingly to get the wire into as much contact as we can. We're looking for 90% contact with the wire with the tooth on a Southend clasp. Any less than that and it starts to become ineffective as a fixative component. It could also start to trap food and cause problems for the patient. So bend the wire till it contacts up along the distal labial surface, close to but not over the incisal edge, and then form the wire so it passes through the space between the distal of the central and the mesial of the lateral tooth. So regular fitting onto the model and small bends ensure that we're not going to have any disasters which are irretrievable. Small bends can be adjusted, large sharp bends are more difficult to correct. And at this point in the proceedings we don't need large bends, we need small subtle bends to adjust it along the surface of the teeth. Check the wire from all aspects. Keep turning the model around in your hand, look at it from the incisal edge, look at it from both points until you're happy that the fit is complete. Again, when the fit around the labial surface is content, you mark off the wire and that indicates where we're going to pass the tag through the two teeth, through the embrasure. So a small bend to begin with, just to ensure we have it in the right place and identify that that is the correct positioning for that wire. Look at the alignment, so when we do bend it, it's going to pass down into the actual palate very easily without interfering with any of the other teeth. And then quite a sharp bend to take it over the incisal edge, as it were, through the embrasure, and then we should have two tags that sit there passively and just need adaptation down into the palate. So we have a V shape that doesn't necessarily contact, with full contact right up to the embrasure on both sides. It follows the gingival margin but doesn't sit on the gingival margin, and the two wires should come through and pass through the embrasures in a way that when we bend them for tagging it's not going to interfere with either of those teeth. Onto the tagging then, we mark off the incisal edge, we mark off the gingival margin, and we mark off the end. Those were the three marks I made there. So when we get to the gingival margin, the wire is going to bend up, away from the palate. When we get down to the end of the crib, we're going to make a 90-degree bend or a small bend down to the palate. And then we go back to the incisal edge, or where the wire passes through the embrasure, and bend the whole part, all those parts we've just bent, down into the palate. They should then fit snugly and follow the palatal shape, although there should be a space beneath them for the acrylic to go beneath. We don't want this wire contacting the palate here, we do need to get acrylic resin beneath that. So we mark off the end of the model and then a sharp 90-degree bend down to create a little foot, just as you've done with all the other components such as the Adam's crib. And that fit will prevent the wire from being pulled out of the acrylic, and will also stop it pushing down and moving when we apply any acrylic onto it. Again, small adjustments may be needed just to ensure it fits nice and passively and there is no bounce or activity in the wire. This should sit on the model without us having to hold it. So here, mark where it passes over the embrasure, mark where it will meet the gingival margin, and mark where the end of the tag will be. The first bend we do is the gingival margin, where we bend the wire away from the palate. Then we bend it down from the embrasure, and that should take the wire right down into the palate, as you can see here. So a small adjustment here to make this a little bit tighter, a little bit closer to the palate. Very small bends. then here I'm just marking in several places where I want to make some bends to allow the tag to follow the contour of the palate. Now these are small gentle bends, so I'm bending away from the beak, not close to the beak with my fingers. Again, make a little 90-degree foot on the end and cut off the excess, and then this should fit in place nice and passively. Small adjustments if necessary to either increase the fit or pull the wire away from the palate to allow it to sit comfortably in place. And there we have it, the Southend clasp.